Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Adorned with Dignity. Today we're on day 27 and we're talking about requirements for Sheitels. And it states that in the last lesson we learn that a Sheitel that is barely recognizable as such defeats the purpose of the mitzvah. We expounded upon the views of many Gedolim and Poskim on this matter. In accordance with their statements and rulings, the following Sheitels are problematic. A sheitel which is made to look exactly like a woman's own hair defeats the purpose of the mitzvah and should not be worn. So they're about to relate a story from Rabbi Dovid Ashir, and it states that they're going to mention this woman by Mrs. S, and she was asked once by an older woman if she was covering her hair. And when Miss S answered that she was actually wearing a wig, the woman told her it looked so natural she couldn't even tell. And at first, Miss S thought this was a compliment, but from the look of the older woman's face, she sensed that she was displeased. And later on in the afternoon, Miss S was learning from the book of Oz V'Hadar V'Lavusha, and she opened the book precisely to the page where the Rabbi Falk cautions about natural-looking sheitels. And at that moment, she became inspired to schedule an appointment with her sheitel maker to fix her sheitel. And shockingly, that night she noticed that she had received a gift certificate from the sheitel maker as a birthday gift. She viewed it as a true sign from above. And when she arrived at the salon, she told the sheitel maker she wanted to make her wig look less natural. After quite some time, the sheitel stylist finished her job, and Miss S was sure that the gift certificate would pay for only part of the cost of the appointment. She couldn't believe her ears when the sheitel maker quoted the price that was the same exact amount of the value of her gift certificate. And Miss S felt so good with her more refined look. And as a fringe benefit, it was done free of charge. So isn't that great? I mean, they really help you in Shemaim. Wherever you want to go, Shemaim will help you. So it says, white and skin color parts are designed for the purpose of making it seem like a person is not wearing a sheitel. Therefore, if the sheitel comes with a white or natural colored part, it should be colored in. And this can be done at home, or a sheitel maker can do it professionally. If the dye begins to fade with the passage of time, one should have that part colored in with a permanent marker. So it says a high quality sheitel with a low flat front that is barely recognizable as a wig should not be worn. Also, many sheitels with very flat bangs hide the hairline and they're not discernible as wigs. And it should be noted that manufacturers are lately designing some of the synthetic sheitels in a way that they can also look very natural. And the acclaimed sheitel maker attests that these wigs are made in France, are intended for actresses in the entertainment industry, and some of them are made with attractive fashion in order to exaggerate the beauty of a woman, and therefore one should be careful with even a synthetic wig to ensure that it is clearly recognizable as a sheitel. When in doubt, if a sheitel is recognizable as such, one should ask the opinion of one who's meticulous in the area of tznuis. So if when in doubt, if you have a doubt, first of all, that's already a red flag, right? But it's really on the line. There are some things that are so you don't know. It could go either way. Then you need to go to someone else at that point who you know is very machmir in tznuis and see what their, opinion would be. And you'd be surprised because sometimes we go over the limit and it's permissible, and sometimes vice versa. So, the whole idea, like I said, right off the bat, there's plenty of things that we know, not just in the area of sheitels, but in modesty as well. We know if there is a you have a question, you have a doubt already, perhaps move on to a different selection, a different choice. So it says, important note, even if a sheitel is discernible as a wig, if it has the same attraction as hair and attracts attention to the woman like hair does, or even more than hair, then it circumvents the basic foundation of the mitzvah, which is to detract attention from the married woman. So remember, what's the whole point of the mitzvah, right? The whole point of the mitzvah is that you're not that you're not attracting the attention of other men to you, right? And this seems to be a big somehow we see this as some kind of a big reward for us if we're the most attractive woman, the woman that every man wants to look at. And somehow it's been drilled in our society that this is the level to strive for. And this really is so far from the truth. Now, at the same token, being modest and, wearing a tikkun doesn't mean that you're the most unattractive person either. But I think, when we start to learn what is beauty, I think beauty has been so defined by the secular industry from the Goyim, and we're kind of taught this lesson. We see it in billboards. If you're watching TV, you watch it there. You see it by the way people are dressing. And somehow, if you go to the mall, you also see it in their mannequins and their billboard pictures. And somehow we're taught that less is more, right? Less is more when it comes to your makeup. Less is not more when it comes to your clothes, and less is not more when it comes to being machmir about covering your hair. I think it's like we pick and choose. We cherry pick the things that we like out of tznuis, and we say, I observe Judaism my way, you observe it your way. I observe this mitzvah of tznuis my way, and you observe it your way. And you have to be really careful because Mashiach's almost here. One, and none of us are guaranteed or forever. So one day we're going to have to stand in front of the court of Shemaim, and we're really going to have to. We're going to go through the laundry list of excuses we gave ourselves, and I'm really curious to see which ones are going to pass through. Which I really think there's going to be none. I don't think that there's it's one thing that you are beginning out in tznuis and you're taking these things on little by little. That's one thing. But I think that, if you're, especially if you're in communities where, it's a predominantly Jewish community, there has to start being a support group there. One, if there's a predominantly Jewish community in your area, then set the tone. You set the tone. Don't let the world set it for you. You set the tone. We can do that. We're capable of that. We have it within us. And I think, again, I've mentioned this before, if you yourself are not someone who is very creative, or you don't have an eye for putting things together, then find someone you really like, you like their style, and ask them to kind of help you along with this. And in this way, you can feel confident about what you're wearing out there every day. So it says unrefined sheitels, and since wigs are designed by the fashion industry, and its main business is for the secular society, the chief goal is to manufacture the wigs in a way that will draw attention to the wearer, and therefore many of today's sheitels are designed in a provocative style that is inappropriate for Bas Yisrael. A sheitel that hangs intentionally over the face, a very curly wig, or over-highlighted sheitel is a sheitel that is dyed at the roots, etc. Such wigs go against the foundation of tznuis and should therefore not be worn. And it's important to note that a fall sheitel that covers only part of the hair and the remainder of the is covered by a large band involves a number of problems. Firstly, it does not cover the hair properly. The band can slip back in the front, or the band can fall and can move and move apart, leaving a gap through which the hair shows. Additionally, since a wig is recognizable as such from the front, if the front is covered with a band, it can appear as if the woman is wearing her own hair. So now this is a key one right here, and it says the halacha of Indian hair. And it says, it is known that in India, women cut off their hair and as a sacrifice for their avodah zarah. It says, if a sheitel has even a small percentage of such hair, it may not be worn. Since an object used for avodah zarah does not become batal bashishin, if it does not lose its impure status, even if most of the object is okay. For this reason, one must be careful that the sheitel does not contain any Indian hair. It should be noted that some labels on sheitels that state that they are made from European hair are falsified. Therefore, one should be careful to buy a sheitel from a reliable source. Also, one should be aware that some synthetic sheitels can have human hair in them. And this is a trend that is becoming more and more, especially in the last 3 years. This is a big thing that they're kind of blending because they want it to look more like natural hair. But let's go back to the beginning of that paragraph for a second. So Indian women, it's well known. First of all, they're well known for their hair. And, there was a documentary by a very famous actor / comedian who was of African-American descent. Now, we all know African-Americans have been well known for using, extensions, wigs. They kind of set the industry, and they have been in this area far longer than we have. and he wanted to actually go behind the scenes of the hair industry because he wanted his daughters to kind of grow out their hair naturally. They were African American. He wanted to encourage them to grow out their hair naturally. So he, with his own money, decided to make a documentary going behind the scenes of what the whole hair industry is about. And one of the things he did highlight was the fact that these women who were from birth growing their hair for the simple purpose of going to this pilgrimage and cutting off all their hair. And one of the things he was pointing out was the hypocrisy that these women are cutting their hair off for free to some quote unquote religious temple, who that person would turn around and sell back the hair, and they're making a killing off of this. And he wanted to highlight this. The other thing I would also mention is that just because it's your quote unquote European hair, let's say 100% it's European hair, Europeans also involve themselves in avodah zarah. Okay, if they're not for Hashem, it's avodah zarah. So in a way, if you think about it, what's the difference if it was Indian hair or European hair? Both sources are sources that are not clean. So, I mean, this is really something that I think people really need to take note of. Okay. You have to know that the source is 100% kosher if you're going to do it. So you have to be very careful in this area. I'm telling you, it's very shocking. This documentary was very shocking, just the whole hair industry. Really, it's very eye-opening. But I think it's just, again, something that you have to be so careful about. I know it seems like we can just trust the label and if it's on the label, what it says on the label, we can trust it. But we know, we've seen this in the food industry. We've seen this in other things. The hair industry is no different. People are out to make a buck, and that's what this industry is about. And so, I mean, they're going to tell you whatever they want to tell you in order to make that sale. You have to be very careful. If you are a sheitel macher, you have to be very careful about, you have to be so diligent. Remember, everything we do, if you were selling, tznuis, that's right away, that's a mitzvah, right? This is why we do these things, because we want to gain in this mitzvah. You have to be very careful. Whatever we're doing, especially when we're giving it to another Jew, we have to make sure it's 100% kosher. It's like feeding them chazer. You can't do it. So you have to be very careful in this area. But you as the consumer have to be even more machmir about everything. Everything. You have to be machmir about it. You are your best advocate. I said this a lot in Kosher 2.0. I'm going to repeat this here. You are your best advocate. You have to be questioning everything. You can't just take things at face value. Okay? That's the lesson of the day, I think, of all things. But that's it for today, and I hope we'll all be together again soon. B'ezrat Hashem.